So your weanling is learning how to tie, and they spook and pull away. Stick around, Seth is going to show you what to do next. Welcome back to Becky, Amio Horse Training, and we are on day 5 with this little bay weanling colt, last call to streak. And he's getting a little bit easier every single time to get caught. We're still walking him back into this little catch pen, and his buddy Badger is going back in there with him. But this time, looking at me, faces up to us, and that's kind of neat that he was willing to face right up to Seth and let Seth pet him on his head and go right to catching him. There was no sneaking around him, no trying to squeeze that gate tighter in on him. None of that, so you see we're making a lot of progress here. So we are going to add some new behaviors to this colt's learning curve today. We already have him walking over a bridge, and we started simulating tying the last time. But now we're going to add touching him all over, and see Seth is already starting to approach that with him. And this colt is having those front legs touch pretty well. So I'm going to fast forward through all of this here until we get to the new behaviors that we're working on with this colt. I do have an additional dog out here today. I have Teddy out here, and she has a pretty high drive herding instinct. So she's kind of always around pretty high intensity, puts a lot of pressure on the horses. And the earlier I can start these colts on getting used to Teddy, the better off we are. Now, Seth goes through his little obstacle course again, but today we're going to start going over these ground poles. And after watching this colt go over these ground poles when I was videoing it, I thought maybe we should have done this before we went to the bridge. It's entirely up to you guys, but, get them stepping over something. It gets them picking up their feet, gets them thinking about their hoof placement. This is all stuff that they're going to have to negotiate when they're out in the pasture, and we want them thinking about hoof placement because we don't want a horse that's tripping underneath us, right? That's not safe. So anytime we can add a little bit of confidence to this colt's resume, the better off we are. And, he willingly follows over Seth and follows over these ground poles behind Seth. They're all spaced out differently. I don't have a specific stride length in between them. I don't really get involved in stride lengths. I'm looking for them to adjust accordingly because out in the pasture, I can't configure how far apart rocks and holes and tree branches are when they're going to be broken down in the pasture, okay? This guy's going to have to figure it out on his own with a rider on his back. So the more I can prepare him here in the corral, in the round pen, the better off he'll be when he starts riding out. So I'm pretty happy with, this colt just willingly following Seth. He's really reasonable. I think that bridge really prepared him for a lot of this stuff, and having to negotiate different heights of poles. In a ranch versatility class or some type of trail course, they're going to have brush and little trees and plants and different colored obstacles set up. So those jump blocks that were in there, they all serve a purpose for him to see them visually, be a distraction, but yet not be so much of a distraction that he can't get his job done. We're going to head over to the bridge now and go over that a few times, and you guys are going to see that this colt readily goes right over this bridge from all 4 directions. And we're going to fast forward through all of that. This is 3 days in a row of consistent work with this colt. That's how long it took. We see Teddy is right there with us all the time. We work on going in and out of this pen a few times. And I got to tell you guys, it's really important that they walk in out of that pen like that. I can't tell you how many times I get 2-year-olds in for training, 3-year-olds in for training that have never walked through a gate into a corral before. It is the most infuriating, frustrating thing that you will experience as a horse trainer or a horse handler. So Seth takes a few wraps around this rail here, and he's going to leave this colt stand and not interact with him at all. We're going to fast forward through the 5 minutes of this standing here, simulating tying. Seth sneaks underneath his neck again, and he's getting away with it on this left side to the right side. But that's going to come back to haunt him here shortly, because if you remember correctly, the right side was the side that this colt struggled with just a little bit, and we're going to find out right here that we're going to see some struggle as Seth tries to sneak back underneath his neck from the right to the left. And this is where we find a hole in this colt, and we're going to find some resistance, and we're going to get some sitting back. Now, that wasn't too bad. He didn't do a very good job of preparing this colt for this, and so he's just going to end up working on this side, on this colt for now. And we decided we're going to start brushing and petting him all over on this side of his body. We've been just touching his head up to this point, and now we need to start prepping him to be touched all over. And you guys, if you guys have never started a horse before, or this is your first time starting a horse, it's surprising how unwilling they are to let you handle all the other parts of their body. And when you see this colt's body language and his resistance as Seth works his way back from his head to his neck to his shoulder to his back, you know, we really see why accidents happen later on in horses' lives. You know, it's not too hard to see when you're watching it happen, you know, why it happened in the first place, because this colt is telling us he's really not ready for any of this. And he's not totally accepting it 100%, but Seth, you know, pursues it on, and look at what happens. He spooks, he pulls away. Fortunately, Seth had a long enough lead rope there to hold him and put him back on the rail. And, you know, fortunately, this guy isn't very big. When they're really big and they do that, they will knock you down. I have been knocked down before when they spin around like that. And Seth is a pretty athletic guy. He's a bigger guy. It's not going to bother him nearly as bad. But if you're a little bit smaller person, you're a little bit frail, you don't move as fast, that's going to be a problem. So you really need to pay attention to these signs, like this colt resisting like this and not totally accepting his situation. And if we can get this stuff worked on now and get through to this colt and get him to accept what we're doing to him right now, you know, it's just going to help us out further on down the road, because when he gets big, it's going to be a whole lot tougher. So why do we want to be able to touch this colt all over? Why do we want to be able to rub on him, pet on him, brush his legs, pick up his feet, pick out his feet, work on his feet? You know, these are all precursors to disposition and how he's going to respond to our requests further down the road. This is all setting us up to figure out how user-friendly this colt is going to be long-term. He tries to pull away again, and Seth is able to catch him up this time a little bit quicker. And the reason he's doing it is because, A, Seth is pushing a little bit too hard on that right side. He's going past this colt's comfort zone on that right side, and this colt is much more comfortable with him on his left side. So when he spins around, he's putting Seth on his left side. Do you guys ever work with a horse or work with your own horse and you find that they'll move their head so that they put you on one side of their body? That is what this colt's trying to do. He's trying to put Seth on that left side of his body because that's where he's confident and comfortable with him. Seth persists. He goes back over to that right side again and goes back to working on it. The only way we're going to get them comfortable is by continuing to do it and then retreating when we notice that we're losing them. You know, we're losing their confidence. We retreat, we go back to where they were confident, and then come back again. One mistake Seth's making here is, you know, he's trying to go down that leg, and this colt is not really having that front right leg touched. Now, remember, if we look back to when Seth first caught this colt, he was able to touch those front legs. And why do you think that is? I'll tell you why that is. He was able to touch them in that pen. The colt wasn't restrained. In this case, the colt is restrained. We're already taking away his ability to flee. And if we take a leg away, then we've added to that pressure of not being able to take away his ability to flee. So by rubbing, you know, down that leg, the potential is there. You know, he feels threatened, and that's what's causing him to react here. But now we have a hind foot cocked. He's getting a lot more comfortable as we move further back. And, you know, why do we want to move further back? Why don't we just stop where we're at, right? You know, why not? The reason is we have to get them used to this stuff, because someday I'm going to saddle him. I'm going to put a back cinch on him. I'm going to swing a leg over this guy's butt, and he's got to be okay with feeling that human contact across his butt. He's got to be okay with all of that. And all of this stuff is precursor to preparing them for the first ride. Okay, so if you notice, Seth still has not tied this colt hard during all of this rubbing and brushing and petting on him. And part of the reason is A, the colt is obviously not ready to be tied hard. But B, an even deeper reason, is that when this colt gets scared and uncomfortable with what Seth is doing, he's going to try to leave the scene. Okay? Just like if I'm doing groundwork and I'm saddling a horse for a first time and they're scared of the saddle, they're going to leave the country, right? They're going to leave, go back out to the rail, and try to run off, right? So if we restrain them by tying them hard and we approach them with something that's scary, okay, like brushing in this case and rubbing all over them, okay, we're going to scare them, and then they have nowhere to go. So what do they do when they have nowhere to go? Okay, they act out, and sometimes that turns into a fight instinct. So flight turns into fight, and fight becomes kicking, double barreling, striking, biting, swinging their body around to get away from that uncomfortable experience that they're having. They just want to get out of that, get away from that experience. So we don't want to tie him hard. We still kind of want to give this colt the ability to leave if he wants to, because it's a whole lot safer for all of us if this colt leaves rather than keep him stuck there, because we don't entirely know yet about this colt's personality. We don't know if he's going to resort to being mean in the event he is so scared and uncomfortable with the situation. And that's part of the reason why I've refrained from showing you guys a lot of groundwork along the way, because you just don't know that about a horse. You don't know when a switch is going to flip in their brain and they're going to resort to aggressively fighting when they're scared, okay? So Seth does a much better job this time around preparing this colt to go under his neck from the right to the left. And once he gets over here, the colt is a lot more comfortable. He's a lot more accepting of everything that Seth wants to do on this side. And you can see it right away. There's less resistance. The head is still up in the air just a touch, but the colt isn't really leaning back on that lead rope nearly as much as he was on the other side. So we're going to fast forward through all of this because all of this gets a little bit boring. Just, basically touching, rubbing, and petting on this colt. Seth is holding the lead rope the whole time. Again, when you play these kind of games, make sure you have a really long lead rope handy. Always go back up to petting them on the head where they're comfortable last. When you get into a spot when they, are not comfortable with you, retreat and go back to the area on them where they were happy. And once Seth gets through touching this colt all over and rubbing on him, currying him, even handling that front leg, he is going to prep this colt to go back onto the other side of him. See him pull him forward slightly, soften him up, and he's going to go underneath that lead rope again, and he's going to go back and work on the other side and finish on this colt's weak side. So see how he prepares him? And this is all really, really good for this colt to experience all of this stuff, because later on, I'm going to do it to him to prep him down the road in the event he does go to another home, because people make mistakes and he has got to be user-friendly. He's got to be okay with having things done to him or done around him that aren't necessarily the safest, and he has to be able to make good choices for both himself and the human that's working with him. Seth switches around to the other side of this colt's body, and he begins to brush him with a soft bristle brush. And something I don't think that we take into account is the different feel each brush has on their body. We see a lot of people that will use a metal curry comb, and I only try to use that piece of equipment when I'm knocking off a lot of mud and gunk that's stuck on their coat. Otherwise, it's a rubber curry, because that helps bring up the good oils in their hair coat, and that gets some good massaging, and generally I can find where they're sore in their body when I use that. And then I use a stiff brush and a soft bristle brush, and every colt, every horse is going to be very different in what they're okay with you using on them. And by doing this, we get a feel for what they like, what they accept, their personality traits. It's just like people. Everybody has a different way they like to be touched, and some people don't even like to be touched at all. And we'll learn that about our individual horses by using different types of brushes on them. And I know that seems really silly and really, elementary, but in this case, we're finding that this colt really likes this soft bristle brush. He's gotten so much more confident and comfortable with Seth on the right side of his body now. He's allowing Seth to rub that brush down that front leg. He's even got a hind leg cock, you guys. Look at how beautiful that is. This colt is so comfortable now with this whole entire experience. Seth has taken this opportunity to pet and rub him on his head. I mean, what a great place to end the day right here. Just an outstanding session with this colt on just day 5. I'm thrilled with his progress. I hope you guys have learned a lot from this whole experience. I sure have, and how quickly they can learn and how quickly they can get these concepts and how quickly we can move along with them and what they're capable of learning. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I hope you stay tuned. We have some deleted scenes from this particular session coming, and I have day 6 coming up soon, and that's when we're going to start loading in the trailer. So I hope you have a great rest of your week. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.